welcome back everyone to From the Earth to the Moon podcast. I'm Elton, this is Andy.
Hello there.
And we are here to cover part 3 of From the Earth to the Moon, the HBO series from 97, 98?
98, I think it was. It's been 84 years.
Wow, it's been such a long journey.
Oh, it's literally 20 years old this year.
Jeez, yes. Oh no, time is slipping away through my fingers. Nuts.
I'm not having it. No. This is it's 2 years old.
Stop. Let's stop everything.
Stop. Yeah.
This episode is called We Have Cleared the Tower.
Yes, it is. This is chronicling the story of Apollo 7, the first manned flight of an Apollo spacecraft.
Yeah. This is a very different one.
It's certainly structured differently to how Apollo 1 and Can We Do This was structured. This is, at least at the beginning, it's largely framed around a documentary they're making, which, rather disappointingly, isn't a real documentary. Because I was like, I really want to watch that. And I spent most of today looking for it. Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah. And I couldn't find that, but I did find a NASA documentary about Apollo 7, but dealing with more from the launch to splashdown, which is posted on our Facebook group if you're interested. Excellent. Yeah, I think I'll be checking it out later on. I ran out of time to watch it today, but yeah, it's going to be one of them things. I'm sure I've got something like that up in the loft. I was given, I think, a bunch of like 10 DVDs, maybe 10 years ago. And it goes through some of the Mercury and Gemini stuff and up to Apollo stuff as well. So, but it's not narrated. It's just a collection of videotape from NASA. Oh, they recently released a load of that stuff. They released the entire Apollo photo archive onto Flickr, which is amazing. And I've posted that on the group before, I think. But it's again, whenever people complain saying, "Oh, the moon landings are fake because all the pictures are too perfect." No. Go and look at there. Most of the pictures are shit, but they only released the good ones, you idiot. It's the ones that they moan about the crosshairs. Oh, yeah. That's the one that I don't know. Sometimes I catch myself going, well, maybe. I mean, all of a sudden, completely out of nowhere, like the Spanish Inquisition, I usually burst into the room and I beat you to death with a broom handle. Oh, and yeah, I will definitely deserve it as well. Quite rightly. Which actually segues nicely into the crew of Apollo 7. Yep. 2 of them anyway. We have Wally Schirra, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, who was one of the original Mercury astronauts flying on Mercury Atlas 8. He was also a Gemini astronaut on Gemini 6, and he was the backup pilot, command module commander for the Apollo 1 mission. Right. So there's the connection there to the Mercury thing. And speaking about crazy conspiracy theorists and the like, we have the only one still alive actually is Walter Cunningham. Yep. Who, while doing research, looking this up, apparently he's a global warming denier. Oh, okay. One of those climate change ones. So I looked at that and I'm just like, okay. So humans don't have any effect on the Earth whatsoever. Exactly. So, oh well. The other person is Don Ellis. S-C? I can't pronounce his surname. They even make fun of this in the episode by calling him what's his name. And he was actually he was originally slated to fly in Apollo 1, but dislocated his shoulder so he couldn't fly. And while Apollo 7 was prepping and all this, he was getting his end away with another married person. So there you go. God bless him. God bless him. Well, he's an astronaut. Did America expect anything for their finest? Well, who is to say? Apparently he was told, well, they were all told by Deke slated all the astronauts, that none of them are irreplaceable. And it also said that he basically said to them, any extramarital affairs must not become public. So he didn't say, don't do it. He just said, don't get caught. Exactly, yeah. Because I suppose it's just bad publicity, isn't it? Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair to the guy, he did marry her in the end. So, not for us to judge.
Then that makes it all better, doesn't it?
That makes it all better. But it is referenced in the episode, so I thought we'd just, touch upon that ever so briefly. But yeah, this is Apollo 7. Different to the main Apollo missions in it's launched upon a Saturn 1B rather than a Saturn 5. So we all know the Saturn 5, the big, huge thing.
Yeah.
111 meters high and, it's 3 stages and it'll take you to the moon. This is the 1B. I would call it Mini Saturn. It's a smaller rocket. It's only a 2-stage rocket. It has the booster stage, the first stage, which looks a little bit different. It looks like it has 4 different little rocket boosters all around it.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but it's got I think it's 8 engines. There you go. 8 little bitty engines compared to the F1 engines you got on the much larger Saturn V.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're smaller compared to the Saturn V one, but when you say little itty bitty, I'm sure I could still sit in the nose cone of them.
Oh, quite happily, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. We're back in Douglas Adams territory where you may think it's big, but the F1 engines are really big.
Yeah, exactly. Is it big or is it far away?
So yeah, that's just very briefly. The Saturn 1B, I believe this was the final 1B launch prior to the end of the Apollo program, effectively, when they started doing the Skylab launches. So they used the S1Bs for the unmanned tests. They used it for Apollo 7, which was the first test of the command module. Manned test of the command module, and then they brought it back in 73 to use for the Skylab missions. Right,
okay. Because the next mission was Apollo 8, and that was to orbit around the moon, wasn't it?
Yeah, and already at this point there'd been a Saturn V launch. Apollo 6, I believe, was a test of the Saturn V, where it just went up and launched into orbit and did a few checkouts and stuff like that there.
Right, okay.
So, Apollo 6, sorry. Did I say 5? Apollo 6 was the test with a Saturn V.
Right, okay.
So little tidbits there. One of the funny things with a Saturn 1B, when it was used after the moon landing missions, was they basically dismantled the 1B launch gantries at pads 37 and 34. Mm-hmm. And the remains of pad 34 are still there with the plaque for Apollo 1, which I think we mentioned last time.
Yeah.
But when the later ones were launched from the Saturn V launch pads, pad 39, they had to sit this thing on what we called it, the milk stool. And it's just like, it's literally like a little stool that the rocket has to sit on. In fact, I'm going to send you a picture of this.
That makes me chuckle every time you mention that. I think it's brilliant.
Here you go. I've sent you the picture there.
Okie.
I know this is great for you listeners at home, but you have the internet, I would assume.
I don't care. I'm going to be looking at this. Hang on a second. Just wait for my crap internet to... Oh, isn't that cute?
It's cute.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, look, it's a little sissy.
Oh, he can't get to the top shelf. It's like when your granny got the little steps out. It was like a stool, but if you had like little steps underneath it and they folded out so you could climb up to the top and so your granny could get the cereal down in the mornings.
Yep, exactly like that.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Man, I just want a small one of them so I can reach high shelves.
So yeah, that's the S1B milk stool. But we probably won't be speaking about the S1B again because, as we said, this isn't really used for the lunar module, the lunar missions. Mm. So this is our only little visit with it. I think a lot of the footage we see of it launching in this episode are from later Skylab missions as well. But it is really cool footage.
I was going to ask you about that. Should we just jump into the footage now?
Yeah, let's just jump all over the place.
Because this is a peculiar episode because it covers, I'm not too sure the period that it covers, but it goes from the funerals of the guys in Apollo 1.
Yeah.
And up until its actual launch itself, until it clears the tower. And it's a documentary-based thing. So really going scene to scene would kind of null and void you actually watching the episode. It's better to watch the episode. So we're just going to jump around the episode, I feel. And
just I was going to say, I just think everyone listening, go and watch the episodes. We're not here to kind of hold your hands through this. We're not doing commentaries here.
No,
we're just pulling out bits that we think were interesting. So,
okay.
so there's your disclaimer.
Yeah, we're not experts.
We're about as far as experts as you can get.
Yeah.
Enthusiastic idiots is how I'd like to describe us.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like that. That. Okay, so the footage that we had at the very end of it blasting off, that was actual footage then? I'm assuming not of Apollo 7, though.
Some of it's actual footage.
Yeah.
Some of it looks like model work. Some of it is footage of a Saturn V taking off, which I noticed. Don't think I didn't. I think some of it might have been from Apollo 7, but I think from the quality of the footage, it might have come from the later missions. They had better cameras on Pad 39.
Yeah.
So I think some of it would be from there.
Right. And
I am guessing, and if anyone knows better, do feel free to correct me on the Facebook group or on Twitter or whatever. But I think they pulled whatever footage they could find just to put that montage together.
Yeah. And I thought it was fabulous. I love them. I like all the dry ice dropping down. Well, the ice dropping down.
Yeah.
As soon as the engines fire up, you can just see it rock, and it just vibrates it all off. It's just amazing to watch.
Oh, it's. I mean, I like the fact that they kind of, play out the drama of did it explode, and the way it's kind of cut together and everything. You go, oh no, I mean, of course it's taken off here. We know that, but it's it's very tense when the flames kind of cover the entire rocket before they're sucked back down. I do know for a fact that the shot underneath looking up as the engine exhausts are coming down, that's a Saturn V, because the S1Bs were much smaller apertures coming out, but it's still really dramatic, and that's kind of cool. And it does the Apollo 13 effect of suggesting all of the gantries retract one by one, whereas in actuality they all went at the same time. They all just kind of swung away.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of cool seeing that stuff. I love watching launch footage. I know I've posted this on the Facebook group way back when in the Apollo 13 episode at the beginning, but check out, there's some really good high-speed footage from NASA of Saturn V's taking off. It's like 40 minutes, and I sit and watch that all day long. It's amazing.
Yeah, I could watch that all day long as well. I think that's brilliant.
So that's all absolutely awesome. I mean, what I also like here as well, I mean, while we're talking about the pad and everything like that, seeing there, we're seeing like the clean room, which we only briefly saw in Apollo 1, that episode there. And that sense, it's very clinical, the way it's kind of done. It's all white with lights. They've got protective shoes on. They've got hair gowns. And we see Gunter Wendt.
I love Gunter in this.
Gunter Wendt. Gunter is awesome. And okay, little bit of trivia here. Did you know Gunter Wendt is actually in this episode?
Is he? Where? Okay, whereabouts in the episode?
So when they have the briefing and Wally Shearer's complaining about they want them to do extra science, and he's like, no, we want the bare minimum. We want to just do what, testing the spacecraft, no extra science.
Yeah, he was moaning about having TV up there as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was moaning about all of that. Well, the flight controller sitting next to Wally there, that's Gunter Wendt.
Right. Oh, nice catch.
Yeah.
Nice catch. I don't want to say that he was moaning about having TV up there and broadcasting live TV. I think was it necessary? That's what his opinion was. And it's the bare essentials to get this job completed and to get the mission a success. And if anything else, we're just adding extra pressure onto ourselves to do something. And in the end, it did turn out to be the first live transmitted TV broadcast from a manned spacecraft, wasn't it? This was the first spacecraft with 3 astronauts going up, or 3 American astronauts going up.
Yeah, that's correct. It was the first to do that. And yeah, there was lots of firsts on this mission. What I think is very interesting is a line Wally says in this, and I think that kind of sums it up. He's a test pilot. And already, I mean, when we think of astronauts now, we tend to think more of scientists, I suppose, don't we?
Yeah.
Whereas at this stage, again, they are test pilots testing experimental aircraft or spacecraft. And there's that line when he says, people say, Glenn and whatever the other guy was, were crazy to get out before Apollo. And he goes, no, they knew what they were doing. And he goes, I'm a test pilot. And after this mission, what's left to test?
Yeah, it's all been through the production line and put onto the road, really.
In effect, I mean, yes, it would remain, figure quotes, an experimental spacecraft pretty much for its entire run, you know. And, you know, you still need a certain amount of skill. But, you know, like he says, he is a test pilot first and foremost. He's not a scientist, so he doesn't particularly care about the science. And I think it's an interesting thing, which we'll almost definitely come back to later on in this series, is in the later mission, only one certified scientist flew to the moon. It was a geologist on Apollo 17. And just one scientist out of the entire missions. And he was a geologist, but it's like, well, it seems like a bit of a missed opportunity there. But then again, you have to remember that the primary aim of Apollo was never really the science. No,
it was if we could do it and proving that we could do it. And then I suppose NASA had a program that I'm not aware of that would plan out to take more scientists to the moon and beyond.
Well, there's actually, you can look this up later on if people are interested. It was called the Apollo Applications Program, which was basically the plan for Apollo. Originally, there was going to be Apollos through Apollo 20. And then afterwards, there was a plan to do a survey mission around the moon where a manned CM would basically spend a month orbiting the moon, photographing the hell out of it and everything, making plans for longer duration missions to then come in the late 70s, early 80s. But it all got canned, basically.
Man.
Yeah. But like I said, we'll almost certainly revisit that topic in later episodes. But yeah, I just wanted to get back to Gunther. We've already kind of briefly seen him portrayed in Apollo 13, but I really like the guy portraying him here. The guy's called Max. Man looks up thing on internet.
Yeah.
Max White. Right.
Yeah, different actor this time.
Different actor. Yeah. But I really like this portrayal. And I like the way when we first see him, you know, he's kind of on this documentary crew. I remember doing the evacuation test, and you'll notice, unlike in Apollo 1, which was the very complicated 3-door hatch system here, you know, here it's just like pull handle, door opens, get out. Yeah. The Block 1 hatch took about 90 seconds to open. The Block 2 could be done in 5.
Really? That different?
That much difference, yeah. So, yeah, they get out in a hurry. They get to the elevator, and the elevator's not working. Use the escape slide. And then we see the emergency slide, which is cool, and was still used all the way through the space shuttle missions as well.
Yeah.
Where if something goes wrong and, you know, you don't have time to get to the lift. I think with the shuttle, it wasn't the like the hook under the arms. It was a gondola sort of thing.
Yep.
But yeah, that exists, and it just kind of got you to a safe distance from the launch pad to a bomb-proof building
That's
located
certainly a ride, though, isn't it?
Oh, hell yeah. Looks like tons of fun.
Yeah. I think my eyes would be closed most of it. But I kind of wanted to see a part where they get into the lift, and it's all panic stations, but then they get into the lift, go down, and it's like, and they're all just looking at each other really quietly. Doors open, and then they leg it again.
Now, obviously, the reason that didn't happen, though, is because it was busted and you were there still trying to fix it.
Well, yeah, they were just moaning at me later on.
Yeah. Oh, damn it, Elton. You had one job.
Oh, yeah, one job, and I screwed it up.
Yeah.
Of course the lift's broken down. Of course it is.
Yeah. We also see for the first time the A7L spacesuit, which is the eponymous Apollo spacesuit, if you will.
It's a lot different to the Apollo 1.
It is a lot different. And still, to my mind, when you think spacesuit, this is what I think.
Really? Okay. That's interesting.
What do you think? I'm assuming you think something different.
Well, I'm not very au fait with the suits, etc. I think it's more the classic helmet that goes along. That's the first thing you look at. Mm-hmm. And the one that they use on the moon, and the one that they've done the spacewalks in with the jetpack as well.
Well, when they're on the moon, When they on the moon.
When they on the
Terrible
moon.
English. When they on the moon, in it like. But anyway, when they're on the moon, it's the same spacesuit.
Mm-hmm.
It just has a different helmet, which they put onto it, and the support packs there.
Right.
So, I mean, just to qualify, that is what I'm talking about. It's the moon suit,
right,
if you will, which has like protective coverings over the boots and over the, I think over almost the entire suit, to be perfectly honest. It has like, because lunar dust is really bad for you.
Yeah.
It's because there's no wind to do erosion or anything there. All of the little particles are razor sharp. So you breathe that stuff in, you know, I suppose it's like huffing asbestos.
I'd say it was probably more dangerous than asbestos.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, I think we can all relate to how bad that would be.
Oh, yeah, because this will cut you on the way down to your lungs.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that is like the spacesuit I kind of think of. And again, it has it's the material. It's obviously very different to what we saw in the Block 1s and Mercury and Gemini. You know, the Mercury and Gemini ones weirdly are they're kind of that futuristic look that they had in the 50s. You know, it was very silver, big zippers, you know, quite skinny, I suppose.
Mm.
If you look at the spacesuit in the original Star Trek series, very similar to that. Then when we get to these ones, now we're having, you know, what we're more familiar with. It's a more durable suit, something that's, you know, not as prone to damage, not as prone to, you know, cutting.
More
I like
workmanlike, isn't it?
Exactly. I like how they have to carry their oxygen with them in a little suitcase.
Yep.
To get out to the pad, which is kind of cool. I like the big locking rings that are all color coded. You know, you got blue on the left and red on the right.
Yeah.
And it's just all cool. The Snoopy caps. I like the Snoopy caps.
I like the Snoopy caps. It's do you know, when I watched this episode, it's the big fish bowl on the head.
Uh-huh.
It does look cool, but balls if I'm putting my head in a big glass bowl while I'm on a big rocket shaking around. I'm sure it's not just glass. I'm sure it's perspex or it's shatterproof, etc. And it's been tested to 1 million tons.
Yeah.
But it's just the thought of it.
Yeah. Being somewhat claustrophobic, I imagine it would be somewhat terrifying for me.
It's so enclosed in there as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like putting a motorbike helmet on, where
well, you're very close up to it, as you say. It's with a motorcycle helmet. You've still got some distance there, and again, a motorcycle helmet you can lift up the visor whenever you want. With these ones, you can't. And that's actually something that comes up later on. I will get back to that in a bit. But yeah, it's very close. What might be interesting to people is you can actually buy replicas of that though. There's a guy called Ryan Nagata.
Right, let me open Google.
He custom makes these ones. Originally, he just did it himself for a hobby. He used to do it in his garage. He's made one for Adam Savage. He's made one for museums. They're currently doing a film called One Small Step, and he actually did the spacesuits for that as well, which brilliant. I think is very cool. So yeah, I mean, check it out. You too can have a A7L spacesuit if you want. I think he also does the Mercury ones too.
Right.
But,
okay.
I don't know how much they cost. I'm sure it's a pretty penny. Sure, it's worth it.
Well, I'm looking at one on eBay right now. Replica NASA Apollo spacesuit. And you're looking at over $1,500.
Over $1,500?
Yeah.
You know what? That's probably less than my Judge gear cost.
Yeah. I think he's a little short for an astronaut, but you know. It looks quite cool. I'd probably fill it out.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick the link in the chat. I'll probably put it on the Facebook group as well.
Oh, cool. And yeah, let me give you the link to Ryan Nagata's page. Because if nothing else, it's just really awesome to look at the stuff he's done.
Yep.
He actually did a series of postcards, pictures and stuff like that. And in fact, if you look on his actual site, which I've just sent through to you here, the first one is him in his spacesuit on a deck chair on the moon.
Oh, brilliant. Right, I shall be blessing that with my presence later on.
So yeah, that's the spacesuit there. And again, I think that's one of the things that always appealed to me with the Apollo program. It is things like the spacesuit. I'm with you. Until I saw Apollo 13, I wasn't really aware of the fishbowl shape they had to them. Because again, I always think of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon with that kind of larger helmet and the big backpack.
Yeah.
But yeah, those ones are really cool as well.
Don't get me wrong. I think it looks really cool. I just don't think I would not trust it. I don't know. It's the claustrophobic thing. As you said about the motorcycle suit, it is just away from your face. But on a motorbike helmet, it's constantly the same distance away from your face, isn't it?
Yeah, you are right up against it. And yeah, I mean, for me, again, being claustrophobic, I'm usually fine. I've been into caves. I can use lifts. I can use the tube. It's fine. But every now and again, you get too hot. Something just kind of sets it off, and it's just And I just wouldn't want to have a panic attack in one of those things.
No. Yeah. So the main crux of this episode then is the documentary, isn't it? So what are NASA trying to do with this documentary?
Well, I suppose what it's supposed to be conveying, and like I said, this is a fictional documentary, so it didn't really happen, but it was by and large to rehabilitate the program after the Apollo 1 fire. What we're trying to do here is to show that we've had a setback, but we've learned from that setback, and we are still pushing forward. We are still going to be able to meet our objectives to get to the moon and to beat the Russians. Those were the goals there. Because, as was said in the last episode, if it ever looks like they're not going to be able to make it, the funding would just disappear.
Yeah.
And we know from historical precedent, as soon as they did make it, the funding pretty much disappeared.
Yeah, mission completed, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. Again, no one was really interested in the science or anything like that. It was just getting to the moon. I mean, I firmly believe if the Russians turned around after they won the mission to the moon and start saying, well, fine, we'll do Mars, the Americans would have gone, right, well, fuck it, we're going there first.
Yeah.
That's the mentality there. But, the Russians decided, fuck this noise. So
I think if there was something on the moon apart from rock and dust, then it might have been a different aspect. You would have sent more scientists up there. But I suppose they felt they got what they could from the moon, and then that was it. There's only so much rock you can pull back.
Well, strangely enough, there is stuff on the moon which is very valuable. It's called helium-3, and it's a specific type of helium which is very. If you're doing fusion experiments and stuff like that, which is the next big thing for. Okay, when you say a nuclear reactor, that's a fission reaction. You are breaking apart atoms.
Yes.
And doing that. A couple of drawbacks are, it uses up fuel, and you have a few nasty side effects. The whole radiation thing.
Yeah, it kind of hurts, doesn't it?
A fusion, however, is slightly different. What a fusion is doing is you're effectively forcing helium together.
Yep.
The sun is a giant fusion reactor, effectively.
Yeah, it's crushing them down together, isn't it?
Exactly. And helium-3 is something that is very valuable in understanding how that works and then fueling that process. So if they'd been more aware of this at the time, then yeah, absolutely, it could have been well worth continuing missions to the moon. But, again, coulda, woulda, shoulda. It wasn't on the agenda at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, gotcha. But what I got from this episode, right, is that NASA want to look like they know that they have made mistakes, and they're kind of laying their cards on the table for the taxpayers and general public of the Earth at large to see what they're doing. And there are certain scenes in this episode where it's very clinical, very clean, very precise as to what they're doing. And that's just their way of showing that they're in control of what they're doing and they're not making the same mistakes. Because in the last episode, we heard that everyone made mistakes. People didn't think of certain things. And it feels like they're trying to present that we're trying to think of absolutely everything, and here it is laid out in front of you for you to see what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to get across to you. I mean, again, what we have to remember is they were effectively inventing this as they were doing it. Mm. Yeah, and while Gemini had laid a lot of the groundwork for certain things, in terms of the orbital mechanics and stuff, I mean, you see them talking about how the only way they can actually test the inertial guidance system is by flying it. The only way they're going to know if they're going to be able to actually go to the moon with that system through mapping stars is going up and doing it.
Yeah.
And you also see, what's the guy? Joshua Malina, who played Will Bailey on The West Wing, for all those who used to watch The West Wing. And, you can see he's stacking data cards into this massive old 1960s computer. And it just kind of blows my mind a little bit. It always reminds me of Batman, the TV series, where the Bat computer, you'd feed in the data card and, stuff would come out.
Oh, you get a little ticker tape out the other end.
Yeah.
And you just read the ticker tape.
Yes, tell you what stocks to buy. So, yeah, they're kind of inventing this. Again, the documentary is really just a framing device to kind of show us, the viewers, a lot of what's going on. And to able to kind of articulate stuff which was either said after the fact in autobiographies and things like that, or might have been said in other venues. Get a sense of how do they feel about the fire and what's going on there.
There's a lot of that as well, I think.
There is a lot of that, and I think that rightly so. And I also think it's important because it reinforces the idea that, they're test pilots. Again, Wally Schur says, I'm a test pilot. I am, we hear about, again, much like Gus Grissom had been in the previous episode, Wally Schur is butting heads with North American. And North American are there saying, well, look, we know your lives are in our hands. Everyone knows that. But he's there saying, well, yeah, but I'm a test pilot. I have an engineering degree. I'm not here just to sit on this thing and be blasted in. I need to have input here to tell you what I need. And it's kind of an interesting back and forth there. But I did like how the night before the launch, they both go to the spacecraft together.
Oh, yes.
And it's kind of a nice little bonding moment where you get the sense that, yeah, we butted heads and, yeah, there's a lot going on here. But ultimately, we're both on the same side.
Well, ultimately, that's what I liked about it. It's, as you said, that they are button heads and they've got different approaches and different thoughts about how to complete the task. Mm-hmm. But in the end, they still end up at the pad at exactly the same time. They had the same thoughts. And that's what they said. Great minds think alike. And it kind of rounds it off. It means that they had the same goal. Their objective was to get where they were at that point, and they both met each other at exactly the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, it's, there's the whole talk about with the couches, and, they can't finish the block 2 couches in time, so they're going to go over block 1s, and, you got Wally's obviously concerned about if they have to land on the ground, and, the other guy's like, well, look, we don't think that's likely to happen. I don't think a confrontation like that would have happened. But, it's definitely a situation where, there had to be give and take on both sides to do it. You could never launch a 100% spacecraft ever. Just in like you can never launch a 100% safe plane. There's always the potential for something to go wrong. But, what the idea is to mitigate that risk as much as possible and, don't do any undue risks.
Yeah, I think that's where they had a bit of license for the drama, really, on that sort of situation. I think that conversation would have been had at some sort of point, maybe in not that sort of style, though. Yeah,
no, that definitely would do. And, I mean, so we're going to go a little bit beyond the episode here, because I have background info. But I think this is interesting, and I think it's worth noting, because we don't actually mention this in the episode proper, but Apollo 7 had a mutiny on board.
Right. Is that why it was up in orbit?
Yeah, and I maybe exaggerate a bit when I say mutiny, but I mean, Wally Schur, he's an old school astronaut at this point. He's been with the program probably close to 10 years. He knows what he's doing. At least he thinks he knows what he's doing. Not saying he doesn't, but he was a test pilot for a long time before that. And he's a bit of a grumpy guy, I think it's safe to say. No, that's not fair. He does have a good sense of humor, but he's very serious and he won't mess around with as far as the mission and safety goes.
Yeah.
And he got a head cold while he was in space.
Didn't they all?
I think they all did, but he got it first.
Right.
So, there were a lot of instances where the crew were unhappy. This spacecraft was, I believe, 4 times larger in terms of internal volume than any previous spacecraft. Okay. So there's a lot more space inside for moving around. So a lot of them got motion sickness, which had never been an issue with previous ones where you effectively just sat strapped in the car, or strapped in the spacecraft. Then there's also the food selection. They weren't overly happy with what they had there because, again, they were in space for 10 days, I think it is, which was long enough to get to the moon and back, effectively. It was checking, would the spacecraft last that long? And, they got a bit irritable. They make jokes about the waste collection system early on when we see the spacesuits, but that was a legitimate thing. It could take up to 30 minutes to use it. Which is not good if you're desperate for a...
I tell you what, if it took me 30 minutes, that's the time it takes for me to go for the next one.
Yeah. But again, the thing is here, it's a 10-day mission. It's not like they're going up, doing one orbit and coming down.
Yeah.
It's at some point you've got to do it. And apparently, the smell was very bad in the spacecraft. It sounds like it was a thoroughly unpleasant place to be. And basically what happened is they started effectively back-chatting mission control. Capcom. And if you go to the Wikipedia page for Apollo 7, it does actually have some transcripts from it. And at one point, they're talking about doing the TV cameras and stuff like that. And she was effectively like, I can tell you at this point, TV will be delayed without any further discussion until after the rendezvous. He's basically saying, I'm focusing on what I'm doing. I don't want to hear about the TV. Shut up.
Yeah.
And Jack Swigert was on Capcom. He goes, Roger, copy. And then Deke Slayton comes on and effectively tells him, dude, just flick the switch. This isn't a discussion. You're doing it. And they were having these backwards and forwards and stuff like that. And again, getting back to what I was saying about with the fishbowl helmets, on the Gemini and Mercury ones, they had lift-up visors. And now because he had a head cold, he was worried about during re-entry, the pressure differential might burst his eardrums or something like that.
Yep.
And he wanted to be able to pinch his nose to equalize the pressure. You can't do that with the helmet on. So he basically turned around and says, I'm not wearing a helmet. And mission control were like, you are wearing the helmet. To which he was like, no, I'm not. And there was a back and forth went on like this. Effectively, I believe they did land without it. And later missions, I don't think they had the helmet for the landing either.
Right.
But because of that, although Wally Schirra had effectively said he wasn't flying again, they were effectively grounded after that.
Wow. They didn't have cameras on the way down, though, did they? I don't think they would have had that at that time.
There was no cameras internally on this one. They had cameras in the Apollo 6 or Apollo 5 test one.
Right.
So, and on that documentary video I posted, you can actually see some of that footage.
Yeah.
Of it. But yeah, it's not like anyone can look and see what they're doing.
No, you could just turn around and say, okay, I'm putting the helmet on now. It's like me doing it to you now. Yes, look, I'm putting this fish on my head right now. There we go. It's balanced.
I don't think the issue here was that so much. I get the distinct impression it was the, and I'm finger quoting here, unprofessionalism of it. And one of the things that fell out of this is every Apollo mission, every manned Apollo mission, the crew was awarded a Distinguished Service Medal straight afterwards. Apollo 7 didn't get theirs until the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s, when only one of them was still alive.
Right. Oh, that's NASA just dragging their heels then. Kind of crossing their feet, crossing their arms, stamping their feet, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, that's that. But I just thought that was a little bit interesting. But if you watch that video, which you will put in the show notes because you're a good guy like that.
Oh, yes.
You can all see, some of the video footage, some of the TV broadcasts they were doing, and get a sense of what's going up on that.
Yeah. Well, let's go through the mission itself because we don't actually get the mission in the episode, do we?
No.
So it was a manned test flight.
Mm-hmm. It's what we call a C mission. So I don't think we've gone over this before, and I won't dwell on it too much, but you effectively had A to J missions. A missions were unmanned tests B missions were unmanned tests. C missions were manned tests. D missions were manned tests with the lunar module. E missions were high altitude tests where you go into a really big orbit.
Yeah.
F missions were practice landings. G missions was the actual landings, and so on and so forth. Again, there's a list on Wikipedia. You can check it all out. But this was a C mission. So this was a manned test of the service module only. Right. Command service module only.
And yeah, this was just a shakedown test on this command module, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so the idea was to get some just orbits around the Earth. And I think the total amount of time spent in space was on this mission was the combined total of the Soviets.
Entirely possible. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. They basically spent near as makes no difference 11 days in space.
Yeah.
10 days, 20 hours, whatever.
That's right, yeah.
163 orbits. I couldn't tell. I'm not as well versed on the Soviet space program, unfortunately, but I could well believe this would have on its own. That being said, though, I believe Gemini 12 was a longer mission.
Oh, okay.
I think. Man looks up more things on the internet.
But that would have been with one...
Just two, yeah.
Oh, two, would it?
Yes,
okay.
two-man crew. Let's see. Gemini 12 was only 3 days. Was it 11? I could be completely wrong, but I know they had one really long duration Gemini mission. No, I'm wrong. It looks like they were only about 3 days or so.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's going to be rough. Just kind of stuck in stuck in your chair for 3 days.
Yeah, you got to sleep, do everything in that chair, haven't you?
Yeah. Still, hopefully it won't take you 30 minutes to have a shit.
I don't know, the wait list, that was what they're testing as well, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. See
if you can actually do a crap in space.
Right, and this is stuff which, today NASA takes for granted, but this, they were still learning at this point. They didn't know if that was the case.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a long old mission in space, and I imagine by the end of it, they were probably quite glad to be coming home.
Yeah, that's right. There was a little interview with, it was John Halsey, I think it was. He was the VP for North American and the Rockwell Space Division.
Uh-huh.
And this was where they had a scene where he was being interviewed, and it was that was perfect, that scene.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where I think he said, "We all understand the astronauts' lives are in our hands, and we will never forget that. Never." Mm-hmm. And it was just, whoa.
Yeah, the guy's going, yes, that's gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, North American, the company making the command module and service module. No, command module anyway. So I've mentioned this before, but Gunter Wendt worked for a different company, the company which had made the Gemini and Mercury capsules.
Yeah.
And basically, Wally Schirra, they said, you can have whatever you want. And he just said, I want Gunter Wendt on the pad. So then NASA had to appeal personally to the president of North American to hire Gunter Wendt to bring him onto the project. Right. And then Wally Schirra had to personally speak to the VP to make sure he was present for the launch of Apollo 7, like he was the pad commander at that point. Mm-hmm. And then he oversaw every Apollo mission after that as the pad leader. He was always the last person they would see before they checked out of the pad. We always shook their hands and said, good luck. And it's also in Apollo 7 where we get the line, I wonder wer Gunter Wendt.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think it makes sense to have a guy. It's the routine of it, isn't it? Because they want these missions to become routine. And so if you have the same guy doing it and in charge of everything and doing it to his high expectations, then you're going to get into a flow, aren't you?
Well, I don't actually think it's that. I think it's what they said in the mission, in the episode, which is he's a hard ass.
Oh yeah.
He literally won't take no, he won't take corners being cut, and he's got his little clip binder there, and everything is checked off in immaculate German precision. Yeah.
Oh yes. Which I love. I just love it.
Yeah. His little bow tie as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, good event. Good event.
Another important part of this episode was the weather, because that didn't crop up until kind of the last third of this episode.
Yeah.
With them venturing out to the weather station and it just being mentioned there, and then Wally not really wanting to launch in high winds as well, because he said about the tracking system, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, and you're going to spear into the tower.
I don't know if this is true or not. I mean, I'm just reading what it says here on the Wikipedia, but one of the things which added to the mutiny effectively was, it says tensions with Shiva began when when flight managers decided to launch with less than ideal abort options for the early part of the ascent. So I don't know if they're saying they were actually over the wind threshold that Wally wanted, or if it was still okay, but it was just less than perfect. I don't know what the case is there. But yeah, it's with the wind. I think it was less of an issue with the Saturn V and with Pad 39, which are further up the coast there.
Okay.
I don't know. It might just be something to do with where they were there. But I mean, again, that's something we've seen throughout space flight. Just this week, just gone, a Falcon 9 launch was scrubbed because of winds. So, it still happens today. You can't fight the weather.
Oh, no, it's one thing that is out of our hands, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And although, again, it's the Russians typically don't. Their launch criteria are, so we say, somewhat looser than NASA's.
Really? You surprise me.
I know, I'm shocked too.
No, get up there. Just do it.
It's fine, Vladimir.
I said launch, and we will launch. There we go. Yep. There will be no excuses. But, yeah, these guys are sat on top of a building, really, that's wobbling around. And I've been in buildings, I'm sure you've been in buildings, where you can feel the building wobbling around in the wind. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening there. And they have their little guidance system tweaking. And that's what gives him the nod. I'm sure he could feel the wind as well. And going up to the Saturn, he was looking out of the bus windows, and you could see him looking at the palm trees and then waving around. You thinking, okay, this weather's going to come into play here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, like he said, how's the weather? It looked a bit windy on the way out here.
Yeah, it's a double check, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is just a double check, just to make sure that you know exactly what page I'm on. I'm saying it feels windy. Are you sure we're all right to go? And I like the tension that's there in this, because you have Deke and he's just, no, don't answer him just yet. Let him make the decision. And he was passing that decision on to the astronauts. Yeah.
Again, this was taking place in October 68. So, and again, they were committed to do it by the end of the decade. They have just over a year, 14 months basically at this point, if they're going to land a man on the moon by then.
Yeah.
And this was the first manned test. If this gets scrubbed for whatever reason or is a failure, odds are it's just not going to happen, because Apollo 1, if we remember, was in February 67. Man looks up thing on the internet.
Hang on, let me go through my notes.
Look through your notes from last time.
January 27th.
Yeah, 67.
Yeah.
So they've lost almost 2 years after that last one in redesigns and understanding what went wrong and getting back to this position. So they're 2 years behind where they thought they were then.
Right.
If this fails, another 2 years, you're in the 70s. You're not fulfilling that obligation. And then there's also the risk that the Russians are going to beat you, which, again, if the Russians won, then America's like, well, screw you guys. We'll go make our own lunar lander. Yeah. Blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is a lot of tension and a lot of things riding on this as well, aren't there?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can see, but I mean, again, they should never compromise the safety, but it can never be 100% safe. So you're in this weird, if they want to do it under those things, he says himself, he's a test pilot. He's used to flying in less than ideal conditions. I just think he wants to make sure risk is acceptable as long as it's an understood risk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's if I know what risk is involved when I'm going into it, I can make that calculation. I can decide. It's like Niki Lauda says, isn't it? He goes, "I'm prepared to take this much risk, and not an inch more."
Yeah.
And you need to know what that is to do that. So yeah, that's where he's coming from in that sense.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing though, isn't it? It really is.
I miss that sense of wonder, I suppose, and of first. I mean, remember how excited we were with the Falcon Heavy?
Yep.
Imagine that for almost every launch was something new is happening. So, some new frontiers being pushed. We're learning something new here. That just would be amazing.
Oh, well, okay. This is in 68. 2 months later, they're doing Apollo 8.
Yeah.
So you imagine, you don't get seasons of TV that close to each other.
Oh, yeah. And from Apollo 8,
putting...
I was going to say from Apollo 8 to Apollo 11, and that includes, the first launch of the lunar module and the dry run effectively. I mean, Apollo 11 is July. So 7 months after that.
Yeah.
That's Spoiler alert, people. They land on 11.
Well, some people believe it.
Take the
I'm still going to still poke that bear.
Yeah.
So, okay, because it is a vastly different episode to anything else that we have in this series, what were your standout moments in this episode?
I like the interaction between, Shira and the people he meets, with the nurse, the doctor, who'd been with him since the Mercury ones. The way he interacts with Deke. I like that bit when they're on the beach with the fishing rods. They're kind of having that conversation about, I'm a test pilot. After this, what's left to test,
That was purely about the documentary, though, wasn't it? That was just for a different style of footage.
That's why they said they were filming that there. For us, it was to hear that conversation.
Yeah. And
to hear that mindset. But yeah, the documentary crew were just getting B-roll, TVs, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
For that thing. I liked that. And I suppose that's really it. It's in effect, Wally Schur almost fulfilling the promise to Gus as the backup pilot. Because I think when you have a backup crew, the promise is there to complete the mission if the prime crew cannot. And that's what he's doing in his own way. And he's making sure it's as safe as possible. He's making sure it never happens again, not just for himself, but for the program as a whole.
Yeah.
He's not being a stick in the mud because he's worried for himself or even for his crew. He's doing it because to get to the moon, this has to go well. And if it doesn't go well, if something goes wrong, well, then that's it. It's game over. Yeah. And there's no more of that. So I like that. I like the way it's structured. Although the second half of the episode is a lot less of that documentary style than the first half.
Yeah, it's you get conversations between people that haven't off the documentary as well, don't you?
Yeah. I suppose for me the big standout from this episode is Gunter.
Yeah,
I love that character. He's great, and it's like, I like Gunter.
Yeah, he does feature in some of my favourite bits on this. I think the meticulous way that they get into the spaceship itself.
All the pre-flight checks when they're going through, and doing the switches and everything. Yeah, it's cool.
The slow motion black and white walking down the corridor and then walking out to applause and getting into the van and then getting to the pad and then just going into their clean room, taking off their boots, the boot covers.
Yeah.
Sliding in there. They've got a routine. They know who's going in where, how to get in, and the way they slide over to the side and over to the slide and then down the centre. And just the preparation, and then all of a sudden another guy pops up from down below. It's just from nowhere.
Oh yeah, it's like, what? Where did he come from?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but they use funny camera angles, and all of a sudden you're looking above the pod, down, and then there's another guy, and you think, okay, well, he's locking them in. He's connecting their hoses because they have their suitcases full of air. their air compressors, and then they have to lock into the system which is on the ship as well, don't they?
Yeah. Well, that's why they have, 2 lots of hoses on the front of a suit.
Yeah.
So they can swap between the internal and external O2 without, having to hold their breath while they do the swap over.
Yeah, but that, and also Gunter as well, where he's got his clipboard and he holds it up as it's launching. But he's not holding it up because he's hiding behind it, because he's worried. I get the feeling that he's holding it up just to cover the glare from the rockets themselves, so he can see what's really going on.
Oh, that's definitely the impression I got as well. He's just, he's watching to make sure everything's going okay with the actual spacecraft itself.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously the launch as well. That's superb. I think that's really well done.
Oh, I as we've already said, I will happily sit and watch 45 minutes to an hour of just launch footage.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything else we need to cover in this one? Because, and I'm going to keep saying it, but it's very different to anything else I've really seen.
It is, but I think that's one of the strengths of the series. Is each episode is in a different style. I mean, I know we have an episode coming up soon, which is all about developing the lunar lander. And, again, it's a very different style of episode. There was one thing I wanted to mention, which I just thought would be interesting to people.
Yeah.
It's the Corvettes they all drive. I just didn't know if people knew the story behind that.
No, go for it. I know that they all were given Corvettes, weren't they?
Pretty much. Basically, there was a Corvette dealership, I believe, in, I want to say Houston. I could be wrong. Again, I'm remembering this as I say this. So, again, if it's all completely wrong and bullshit, feel free to correct me. But basically, this dealership, I basically turned around and said, hey, if you're an astronaut, we'll give you a Corvette in effect, as long as you drive it.
Yeah.
And they were all like going, well, yeah, sure, okay. And it was great for the astronauts because, they got the Corvette and, it looks cool. And it was great for Corvette because all the astronauts are driving fucking Corvettes. Which I just think is, and then again, it comes back to, like, I mentioned as one of my favorite lines in The Martian is when Mark Watt is saying, sometimes wonder what would an Apollo astronaut do in this situation. He'd probably down 3 whiskey sours, drive his Corvette to the pad and launch to the moon on a command module smaller than my rover. And it's just like, that's just part of that image. It is that, the Corvette is part of that 1960s one. And that's probably why when we think of astronauts, we think of them as Top Guns and things like that, instead of professional test pilots. It's that perceived image there of things like that. So
yeah, I think also the footage of these astronauts coming out to applause.
Mm-hmm.
You get applause nowadays. I remember watching the Challenger one and everyone getting applauded as they came out there, but they didn't have all the suits on, did they? It was all in their jumpsuits, etc.
Yeah, they only started wearing the spacesuits on the shuttle again after Challenger.
Oh, did they? Oh, okay, that's interesting.
After that, they wore orange survival suits.
Right, just in case.
Just in case. I found it here. So basically, it was a Florida dealership, and it was the 6 Mercury astronauts were offered, Corvettes on special lease terms. So they're all driving the same car, and this kind of continued on to the Apollo ones as well, with a special gold and black color scheme designed by Al Bean.
Right, yeah, it's just a great way of advertising Corvettes, really, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's always going to be synonymous with the astronauts of this era. Just brilliant.
Apparently, NASA was worried about photos of them in the cars would serve as an official endorsement. It's like, little bit.
As long as they don't roll them and they end up burning to death in them, then, I think you're all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you're all right. You're going to get these test pilots that fly test aircraft all the time. And so you're giving Corvettes and you're going to race them, aren't you?
Oh, gosh. Well, again, it looks like a spacecraft with 4 wheels, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely a special car. Definitely. Now made out of plastic all over the place, though.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. Still using leaf spring suspension as last time I checked.
Oh, really?
Well, the last time it was on Top Gear, it was anyway. It's been a while, but yeah.
5-litre engines. That's not very 2018, is it?
No, it is not.
Cool. Okay, well, shall we wrap it up there then?
I think so. I think that's all that I can think of for Apollo 7. Like I said, if you check the show notes or the Facebook page, and you can watch the actual documentary of Apollo 7, which has like real footage there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Definitely worth checking out on that one. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone listening to this. Can I just remind you, if you want to listen to me and Andy waffle on about other stuff that we don't really know about, then pop along to road2media.com, where you can listen to me and Andy talk about the Grand Prix in the Grand Prix podcast.
Coming back this week. Yay!
Is it this week? Oh, okay.
Well,
okay.
Its testing starts tomorrow, so
good.
4-day test. I'm thinking, if you're around, maybe Friday or something like that.
I can't see why not. Why not. Nice. Always nice to have a production meeting.
There you go.
And you can also catch us on the Band of Brothers podcast, which is now completed. We have all 10 episodes of the Band of Brothers show in a podcast form, along with Saving Private Ryan, kind of like this show as well. This is where that idea has come from. You can also catch me on the Black Dog Podcast, which is at blackdogpodcast.com. Pop along there. It's a film group kind of thing, reviewing crappy movies and good movies all over the place. So if you like
this
movies...
This week's episode is well worth listening to as well, because it relates to Apollo. The Dish.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've never seen The Dish, and I'm not on this week's episode.
Well, for everyone else out there, it's a very funny film, well worth checking out, and it's the true story about the only station which could receive the first pictures from Apollo 11 when it landed, which was located in bumfuck nowhere in Australia. So, it's well worth a watch. It's a good old film, good old romp.
Sam Neill as well, isn't it?
Sam Neill's in it. Yeah, I can't remember the rest of the cast, but it's yeah.
Do you know what put me off of that when it first came out?
What's that?
The kangaroo on the poster.
Did you think it was...
What? Just a bemused kangaroo. I was like, no, talking animals, no thank you. And so I'd always steer clear of it.
Yeah. Well, you know, what you can do now is you can watch it and feedback. Oh, wait, I don't do feedback anymore. They might make an exception for you.
Yeah. Nah, they'll be all right. Yeah. They'll be all right.
Tell you what, I could just turn up and pretend I'm you. They would never know the difference.
Do it, man. Do it. Yeah. Also, check out Shonky Lab, which is at shonkylab.com or on Road 2 Media. And this episode just out, we're talking about gun control and gun culture as well, in light of all the events down in Florida a week or so ago. So they want us to talk about it, so we did. And so there's our little presentation for it. Andy, where can everyone find you?
Well, again, aside from everything you just said there, you can also catch me on The Great Derelict, which is a podcast about everything and anything to do with science fiction. We just had a very in-depth discussion about why the Enterprise D got blown up, coming to the result that it's all Dr. Crusher's fault. And next week I'm speaking with Anne-Marie talking about aliens. So that should be fun.
Nice. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Forward to that. And if you do have 5 minutes spare, then please pop along to iTunes and maybe review this show or any of the other shows that you listen to. Maybe even shows that aren't related to us. You know, just give them a little review. It helps everyone out splendidly. So until next time out, thank you very much for listening and goodbye.
I should go.